Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Anthony Pennant, and I am the author of Celebrating the Resilience of Queer Black Relationships, a guide to multi-dynamic relational therapy. You're about to see a conversation between a colleague and myself, Dr. Carmela Solomon, dialoguing about the book and why it's important. And I just wanted to give an intro before you get into the webinar, into the video, but also to introduce you to the Colibri Center, which houses this model and the book and the trainings that will come from this soon. And it's the first queer model of therapy that is hosting. I hope that you enjoy the conversation. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at the information listed below. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoy the conversation and are inspired to do clinical work through this model. All right, Dr. Solomon.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Carmela Solomon. I am the owner of Vieira Counseling PLLC, and that's my private practice. And I am also the program director of Antioch's CFT program in the Seattle area. So I live here in Puyallup, Washington, and I am super, super excited to be doing this with Dr. Pennant, who is, he is my brother from another mother. I now have 3 brothers that I claim. I have so enjoyed working with Dr. Pennant, reading his work, and just kind of picking his brain with all the information that he has in it. So I hope that this webinar is one that you all not only learn something from, but really enjoy. Dr. Pennant, how are you?
I'm doing well, but before we get into that, thank you so much for the gracious introduction and being here in the space with me. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your work, and I think just how steadfast you are. You were like, hey, if it's ever like this thing where you say you're going to do this, this is what it is. And I love being able to count on folks whose words are true and have integrity like that. So I just really appreciate you very much, Dr. Solomon.
Absolutely. By the way, my mom is expecting you for Christmas or Thanksgiving because we have talked about you quite a bit.
Okay, okay. Do I need to bring macaroni or some yams, or is that too much?
No, she's not going to let you do any of that.
Well, I will show up though.
So this book is
Mhm.
one that gosh, when I read it, it resonated. It really it spoke to me in so many ways. So tell me the why behind writing this type of book.
It's a really good question, and this will be the 3rd book launch experience that has been, event that's been done, and the why is still the same. It's this thing that resonates within me when people ask me about it, and uh, the why is that it's needed. Number one, you, the field of psychotherapy, family therapists, we're both marriage and family therapists by training and practice, is great. It does a lot of things and operates in a lot of spaces, and there are no models that really center Black folks. There are no models that center queer folks, and there certainly aren't any models that center Black queer folks. And what I found in my practice was that, I'm working with folks, and you could find wellness through many of the theories that you use. But I found that I was always doing these like weird adaptations to where people's actual centers lie for themselves and like what they thought wellness was, even some of the vocabulary,
Yeah.
what was important to them and how I would share things. Those things were lacking. And I got tired of translating all the time in therapy as a therapist with like queer folks, queer Black folks around like how to intervene in their lives. And I said, it's time to write a book based on some of the experiences that I've had and my own lived experiences to like center people of color, center queer people, and have that be the starting place, right? As opposed to like, this is what a heteronormative Eurocentric place is. Therefore, let's twist it and do that. So that's the why.
The one thing, like the title really resonated with me in that two words really, actually multiple words stood out, but two big words stood out for me. One was the idea of celebrating, and two
Mhm.
was the word resilience. I get so personally bothered when people come at the Black experience from a place of strength versus a place of resilience. So, what made you? What's the backstory behind the title of the book?
That's also a very good question. I originally, when I went to create the title, I thought it was long, and it still is long, right? And when you work with publishers, sometimes they're like, "Well, give me a little something," like. But I really wanted to showcase, I think, a couple of things. Like you said, celebrate and resilience. I think that when we talk a lot about queer and Black communities, it is usually through the lens of what they need. Things are really rough, right? And so we got to do all these things to like up them. And some of that is not like untrue, right? And I was like, no, let's be in a place that is celebrating what is done very well, right? What is probably under celebrated. And the resilience really is about highlighting how the joy that comes from being able to persevere in such like awful circumstances, socially, relationally, medically, in the world, like anti-Blackness, but still like have the ability to show up every day and not burn the world down, but still find joy. And again, not burn the world down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Brings me to my next question of the focus on Black queer relationships. You and I have talked a lot about when I first started doing research on Black couples therapy, how I was at a loss because the research is not as thick and rich when it comes down to Black couples therapy. So I'm going to make a big assumption here in that the research is also not thick and rich when it comes down to Black queer relationships. So, how did you get to the point of focusing on that specific population?
It's a good question. The one of the readings that I have selected to share with everyone tonight talks a little bit about that, about the research. I believe that if we are to uplift and center some of the most vulnerable folks, identity-wise, position-wise, in our societies, that if we bring that up and start there as being able to like support folks and center on, then everybody else from that point will be able to be, to receive a benefit. Why? Because there's a collective aspect to our wellness that goes missing, I think, often in psychotherapy and like the role of the therapist themselves, right?
Mm.
So how I landed there, I was like, I need a place that's going to be able to like that really needs this support. Like what always gets skipped over. You think about even like the in the curriculum for many programs that teach therapists, the amount of time that you get in families is decent. Couples, probably not enough. Thruples, non-existent. Queer relationships, it's usually a paragraph that's like, and there's John and Mark. How would you work with them? A gay couple that is this, that, and the other, and 60 years old and been together since 1999. What? Like, I got tired of like that being the reference of how people were learning about such vulnerable communities that really needed a lot of support and then go to therapy or end up being harmed because they don't have their therapists aren't trained appropriately.
Which is really profound and interesting at the same time because it leaves out an entire genre of population
Mm-hmm.
of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And as a therapist, you in not being trained in that, you have no idea where to look. So when you first started seeing that there was this huge gap in research, where did you go to look? Where did you go to try to find something that you could kind of sink your teeth into?
I would go to places, I would like search like the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy or go to Google Scholar, which I think a lot of people do. and you type in like queer relationships, gay relationships, family therapy, couples therapy, and the majority of things that you got were either like dealing with medical issues, HIV and queer relationships, or they were like these are EFT trials and then it's retrofitted for queer folks. Those are the majority of places that I saw. And then for Black couples therapy or Black relational therapy, I mean, some of those things were from are like foundational text of like MFTs. Nancy Boyd Franklin, right, as an example, have written a lot about Black families. And then Yamante Cooper and Erica Holmes wrote a wonderful book around doing Black couples therapy, and I
Right.
really appreciated it because that like was like, okay, there's a little more substance there. But again, outside of that, either everything was either like special asterisks, here's how to deal with these things, and or there were such small participants of the research, the sample group, right? That was like, so it's kind of applicable to you too.
Yeah, yeah. Monty Cooper's book, Black Couples Therapy, has been my Bible for
Hmm.
working
Hmm.
with Black couples because there's a lot of layers and nuances that occur in our relationship. And so one of the things that you did throughout this book is you offered critique of current models of practice and how clinicians do couples therapy. So this is going to be a two-part question. One is how did it feel critiquing like these big models? Like, we do this work and there's not a whole lot of critique or a lot of space for the critique. And then coming up with your own model that actually supports what you are trying to do. So how did it feel with the critique first?
Real talk, I'm still a little like, oh, did I do that? I mean, picking a fight, which is not really picking a fight, it's really just having a conversation that's really being needed. And I'm being a little dramatic about it, but that's partially me. But I think having the ability to like push the field forward and bring these to the mainstream, these like questions to the mainstream, I think are like it's needed. I'm dedicated to really making sure that family therapists, therapists in general, right, like the helping profession, even medical doctors that are engaging with folks, they understand that one size does not fit all. And the only way that we like sharpen how sharpen the quality, right, of treatment across the board, emotional well-being, couples therapy, throuples therapy, any of these aspects of what people come to us for, and even how we set public policy, is if we start having more dialogue about how one size cannot fit all. There has to be a multitude of things about what people tap into, and this book is not. I'll read about it in a little bit, but this theory is not necessary for everyone. It is for queer folks. It is for Black queer folks. It is for Black folks too, and others. And like I'll go back to the critique. The critique is really needed, and I think whenever we get into a place that like we're settled on the science of what that looks like for relationships for everyone, when the contextual environment continues to change and cause really like a lot of anxiety about who people are, the conversations that you're having in therapy need to change, and your scope of how you intervene with people also need to change. And then,
Well,
oh, sorry, yeah.
no, and that's not only is that profound, but that's also something that does not happen in therapy. When we talk about couples therapy, at least from my perspective, we talk about Gottman, we talk about,
Mhm.
emotion focus. We hardly ever have or imago therapy. We hardly ever step out of these frameworks that sometimes just don't work. You know,
Sure.
I'm trained in Gottman, and there are most of my couples. They get to a certain point, and then it just stops working. It stops being part of their narrative, part of their lived experience, because there's some missing parts here. So, what makes your theory fill in the gaps of the missing parts? What makes it different?
What makes what makes it different is that again, the starting point of what wellness looks like for queer people, people of color, queer people is very different, and that's front and center. Like
Yeah.
how people have conversations, right? The kind of directness that is like I think required, the kind of content that is required to have conversations about in therapy and what is meaningful to folks. I do not understand, right, how any therapist right now is not having conversations around the environment of what's happening for folks in the States or the world, or like how like capitalism and poverty in some particular way are like these like forces that are really encroaching on people's like wellness and autonomy, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that like you align with something in particular or not. It just means that these are forces that are at play. So, and this is like no shade really to like Gottman or EFT. I think they're wonderful models in their own right and have a lot of research behind that proves some of their effectiveness.
Mhm.
And when you're talking about sound house, are you talking about race? Are you talking about ethnicity? Are you talking about homophobia or internalized homophobia that might show up for folks?
Yeah.
Internalized racism that might show up for folks? How are you talking about justice, right? In the particular room. And when you say, like, oh, you may have anxiety, are you tying it only to that first order thing that's happening in the moment? Right?
Mhm.
Or are you saying that, oh, okay, how are these larger anxieties against the person who's in front of me talking about they're having trouble with their relationships or trouble in their families or trouble in just in the individual aspect if you're doing individual therapy? How are you bringing that into the room and making that something tangible? Because when, like in this model, when you do that, that provides relief for the people and permission to talk about that because you're saying it's important. I see that. I'm going to bring that in here. Let's grapple with that. Other models are not talking about that in that particular way. They're like, well, you can deal with that when you can. I'm not equipped to do that, or that's political. That's too personal.
But here's a problem with that, right? And you and I know this from multiple conversations with each other. When we don't talk about the political context and the historical context in which our clients come from, we almost erase a whole part of their existence, of their lived experience.
That's right.
So, and I know in reading your book, you bring in not just the person of the therapist aspect of it, but you also bring in that historical context in which the client comes from. So, how do you do that in therapy? How do you do that in real time?
I think it's important to there's two things I want to say. The reason that I added person of the therapist in there as like a necessity for clinical training and a part of this model is that when you're working with folks who have had their identities or life experiences erased or not acknowledged or weaponized, right? Or there's violence in some particular way because of who they are. Um, if you can't track how you might be feeling about that and or the anxieties or biases that you have around that, or aren't showing up authentic, I think that can be seen, that is a threat, I think, to people that come into therapy because you're like, well, that's not a thing. Or I'm a blank slate. We are not blank slates. We're
Mhm.
humans interacting with humans, doing very vulnerable things, and sometimes with really unwell people, right? And that requires us to kind of know ourselves and what is happening for us in the moment, and to have a level of, if I can just take this experiential term, of this congruence. What I'm feeling on the inside is what I'm like it's displaying on the outside. And I think that when there is a level of congruence that is present in the therapist, what happens for client systems is that they can trust that greater, right? That greater sense of like, I know you're gonna like get to what needs to gotten to. I know that you're gonna share with me what needs to be shared, or you will challenge me in ways that aren't harmful to me,
Mhm.
because a lot of these populations, myself included in part of those populations, have had incidences where people you're not seen, you're not heard, because you can't trust that the person is really being there for you. And then to answer really question, the other question you had about the historical aspects, the model pulls from like various like histories. There's like African American and Black history just in general and global majority context, and a little bit of queer history around like where queerness is. And a lot of that lives within the chapter on ballroom, which is one of my favorites.
I have to admit that was one of my favorites too. I learned a lot in that chapter, I must admit. But I like the tenets that you bring forward in the book. And so one of the things that really um, struck me is you're not just looking at the historical aspect of where the person comes from, but you incorporated a lot of your own lived experiences in explaining this model, and you made it very personable and understandable at the same time. Was that a difficult task for you to do?
Yes, I want to read to you a little bit about from chapter 3 about what you just said about the tenets of the model, but it was very difficult. It still is difficult for me. I really struggled with how open and vulnerable I was being, and at the same time, it paled in comparison to the people that showed up with me in therapy to like really need that same thing about being open and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I thought like if I can do this, which will help other folks, other queer folks, black queer folks, other people to get better treatment and have more quality treatment that sees them, this is pales in comparison to what I might be feeling in the particular moment. So
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna read this for you, read a little bit. Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is from chapter 3 called Multidynamic Relational Therapy. Can someone tell me where the research on queer people and their relationships is? Despite an increase in visibility of LGBT plus individuals worldwide, the number of publications regarding queer relationships remains elusive. Many of the major models of therapy claim that their model can be adapted to fit the needs of queer folk and their lives. However, there are no models of therapy that are built with the identity, dynamics, and relationships of queer folks as the core of the model. As this is the current case, multidynamic relational therapy, MRT, which is the name of the model that are written about and created, was created to fill this gap and provide a solid foundation for clinicians to be trained and attuned. So as you were saying, the model has like 5 tenets that are involved in it. The first one is societal expectations. Those are identifying and challenging harmful external pressures on relationships and individuals. Values alignment ensures consensual agreement on the core beliefs that are present for folks. Power analysis, consciously sharing power rather than allowing for dominion over other people. Liberation, actively challenging internalized oppression. And then lastly, radical emancipation, fundamentally restructuring relationships free from oppressive constraints. One more little thing I want to read. Unlike traditional models that adapt heteronormative frameworks for diverse populations, MRT begins with the experiences of those facing multiple intersecting identities as its foundation, recognizing that Black queer relationships have developed nuanced strategies for thriving despite systemic marginalization. This model emphasizes flexibility, allowing therapists to move fluidly between interventions as clients evolve, while aiming for what I call fourth order change that not only transforms individual relationships, but extends into their communities, ultimately empower client systems to create authentic, equitable connections grounded in justice, mutual liberation, and the fundamental belief that LGBTQ plus relationships represent healthy, normal variations of human intimacy.
That part. And here's the thing though, Anthony, when I read this, I had to kind of sit with that for a moment because I thought back on my own training, right? And I graduated from an HBCU, so I'm like, I am trained in all things Black. I got my Black
Mhm,
card right here in my
mhm,
wallet, right?
mhm,
But at the same time, when I got exposed to the pop model, I really did start to feel a sense of inadequacy here because I have always been trained that we don't bring our lived experience into the therapy room. That is the time for the client. That is not our time. And yet, the pot experience was like, no, 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 no. You
mhm,
need to bring a part of you in here because this is your signature theme. And how is that showing up? And training and working with my clients on their own signature themes
mhm,
really has been an eye-opening experience. And so when we talk about, especially under the liberation part of this model, what does that look like for your clients when they finally get it that, wow, I can be free. I can operate from a place of my own intimacy, my own humanity, and nobody is going to, um, you know, beat me up for it, so to speak. So
yeah.
what does that look like?
I think that Bowmanian therapy, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I think there is something that is important, that differentiation is a good thing, right?
Mhm.
Being able to know that you are a separate entity with a container that can consent into things versus like being so overconnected with folks. And when we think a little bit about liberation and how that shows up for people, I said this to a client today, and I will say it again. What other people think about me is none of my business. It's just like what I I can't stop you from what you think about. I can show you in relationship that I may be not what that is, but if you've made a determination about where you are and how you feel about me, and I know that not to be true, I am not going to let you have power over that. So liberation, which the book talks a lot about liberation therapy and pulls from some of that. I just want to like be very clear that like it's not something I made up myself, right? Like it's
Mhm.
pulling from some of the tenets of that, but the how that shows up for folks in the therapy room is allowing them to walk in their own power and autonomy about how they choose to set the directions of their life for themselves, for their relationships, and for a chosen family and whoever else that's incorporated in that communities, right? That
Yeah.
comes from the societal expectations about what people should or should not do, right? Some of that is like, well, you get a choice to opt into that. Is that something you like? You want to modify? You want to keep? You want to
Yeah.
think about and reject? Right? What kind
Yeah.
of values or things are important that you do? And I think the other part is like power. People learn how to actually share power, right? And know that power is a really important thing in relationships. Domination happens all the time, but when you have when you have that mixture and an understanding and awareness that goes into that liberatory state where people have the freedom to be who they are and want to be because it's how they choose to align for their life and their relationships.
Yeah. That power analysis is such a powerful tool in couples therapy because it's not until someone actually points out that there is a shifting, there is a
That's
different
right.
power, and then you get the what? Hold
That's
on.
right. That's
That's
right.
not what I'm doing here. I'm like, oh, but it is.
That's
But it
right.
is. So and that feels, as a couples therapist, that feels so awesome and amazing when you can point those things out and not in a way that makes a person feel guilt or shame or anything like that. But this is a reality of what your relationship looks like. And there is the possibility and option of changing that. The other part to that is this concept of radical emancipation. That's such a Dr. Pennant term. So how did you come up with that name right there? Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, the term is like, like emancipation obviously has been around for a while. And, there's a lot of things like radical justice, radical this, radical
Mhm.
that. Like, but, when I thought about like what it really meant to be free in like ultimate connection with yourself and others, because I think that's one of the parts of the book that and the theory that really like are important is that like the aspect of community care and being connected in a communal way to people is really important, right? And then we talk about self-care, which is important for the individual container. We need to figure out what we need for us, and self-care within the context of community care are also super important, right? Some of that strength, that ability to live within those contexts and like strengthen who we are together in those relationships. So radical emancipation, when I was thinking about that, I said I need something that is like completely like different out there and really like shows what it's like to like redefine relationships according to like this alignment that allows people to have a lot of freedom and autonomy and
Yeah,
power.
yeah,
And radical emancipation came in, and I like thought about it, and I was like, okay. Then I thought about some of the work that I've done using this model with some of my folks, and I'm like, every time that I think I've seen someone get to a point of radical emancipation, it was the same similar thing that I was like this feeling of like just like happiness, like a little bit of like anticipation in my chest, and the kind of the language that people were using about the freedom to decide what they want for their families, their relationships, or themselves, and how they created community
yeah.
around that choice.
The community building, it's amazing. On a side note, I read part of this passage out loud, and my granddaughter, Bella, there's always a Bella. And Bella says, radical emancipation? And I said, yes, Bella, it's called radical emancipation. She says, I am radically emancipated from caring about other people's feelings, Grammy.
what I'm talking about.
I'm
Out of the
like,
mouth of babes.
where did this eight, whose grandchild is this 8 year old? Whose ancestor is she? Whose? She is coming from the ancestors, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, one thing that came up that really, really landed on me was in chapter 4.
Mm, mm.
Talks about the very first sentence, talks about the sweetness and the pain of
Oh,
experiencing our own Blackness.
can I read that? That's actually one of the things that I actually wrote. So this is from chapter 4, Blackety Black, but some more black in there. And this is funny. I've said this in some of the other like launch events, but like the publisher wanted me to change that title. And I was like, no, I like it. They were like, but it's not searchable. And I was like, I don't care. So I like kept it. I didn't change it because I like needed it to be like black. And then when I thought about black, I thought about blackety black. And I was like, this is great. Blackety black, black, black. I love it. So that is how that came together. And I like, I'm proud of that. I'm like so proud of how I could pull that. Um, okay, chapter 4. Being a black person in this world is one of the sweetest and most painful experiences that a person can have. Black people in every part of the earth have had to deal with attitudes, laws, and sentiments that actively dehumanize them solely because of the color of their skin. They have been barred from entering places, having narratives assigned to them about their behavior or families, and have had been subjected to being sold into slavery and have had their histories and lineages interrupted by being displaced, beaten, and broken. The reclamation of the word black and the power of being black were in part made popular by the Black Panther movement. To be black was something to be proud of. One could not change your skin color, but why would you want to? The skin we were born with provides natural sun protection. The color of our skin ranges from caramel to dark chocolate and provides such a striking contrast to many colors. Our hair comes in so many curl patterns that create opportunities for us to design our hair in new creative patterns and styles. Our community often sets the tone on fashion, language, appeal, cuisine, and music. There is a sense of pride and honor when who you are and the creative outlook of the expression of your being is a cornerstone of cultural symbols and identity across various communities. There is a sense of pride and acknowledgement when you can change the lexicon of engagement between people.
Out of the entire book, I think this chapter is my favorite.
Mhm.
It's my favorite. And it really speaks to, the historical context of what it has meant to be a person living in a Black body. And
Mhm.
yes, not everyone has had the same experiences, but we all know that historically we come from the roots of slavery,
Right.
and those roots still reside in us. Those ancestors are still here with us. That historical context is still here with us. And when you can, when you talk about basically your color, the color of your skin being seen before the words you ever speak, it's like that sounded, there's so much of this chapter that sounds like it was personal experience.
Of course it was. Of course it was. I mean, if you read this book, you're reading parts of what my life has been and also parts of what other people's lives have been, right? I just had the privilege to be able to write this, to share this with other folks, right? And I like that. Um, and it's a duality. I talk about the double consciousness aspect of, right, like and there and where that comes from. But you hold so much in the moment, and if you really like allow yourself to slip into some crazy place, right, you can go off, you can flash. That is it. That can be it if you want to. And I think a lot of people get to that point because it can be a lot, and I understand why. And for me, I've learned to like live with that intensity and also like figure out how to put it to the side, how to like again tap into some like friends and family and community to like share and commiserate and help me like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And again, the reason why I share this and this experience is that if a therapist is unknowingly, right, triggering that or not creating a safe space for a client system to be able to navigate that, that's dangerous, that's harmful, right? And it's one thing, it's one thing to like know that and try to like sit with people. I think people can appreciate that. But it's another
Yeah,
thing to assume that like it's not there, it's not harmful, it's not something you need to talk about. The
yeah,
emotional, the emotional like energy and all those things that it's just it drains people. It's always in the background, just going. People learn to like deal with and go through in other parts of life, but just like, okay, I got that 75%, 25% energy drain going on there. I'm gonna
yeah.
figure out about this.
Yeah, it's that I appreciate you naming the dangerousness of it, but I also appreciate the fact that you identify this model as being one that is coming from the Black Panther Party movement, and I read the where is that Black Against the Empire book, the history of the Black Panther Party, and I really had to kind of calm down myself because that history was just so rich with what it meant to be a Black person during that time.
Hmm.
And being born during that time, but not a part of that time, was is a significant influence on my life in how I was raised and how I, view the world. And so to bring in the Black Panther Party was really profound when I read that part. And I'm just like, oh, this is gonna be highlighted, you know,
Yeah, there
because
was level. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
because I think that people think of them as militant and against the government, and that really was not their history. Their history was about building up
That's
the
right.
Black community and making the Black community a safe community in which to exist. And they were
That's right.
demonized for that.
That's right. That's right. A level of self-determination,
Mm.
determination amongst the community, a cohesiveness, right, that allow people to have safety in their community themselves because of their identity. And if you knew that everyone else was together and could do that, you could do wonderful things. I think this part is like again missing from I think a lot of what wellness looks like for people. Like when we think about what they need, right? This is the community care aspect. I said that it's important, like developing chosen families that queer people do, that sometimes some black folks do, right? And certainly black queer folks, because this is part of the other thing is that like homophobia is very prevalent within black communities, and there's lots of other things we can unpack. But for now, knowing that that is something that does divide, a lot of the community, but the aspect of being able to have that comfort and know that you as a therapist can help either help people create that as being a therapeutic goal, right? And having again other people know that they can get that allows people to feel less alone. Most of the world operates within a communal aspect.
Absolutely.
Most of
Absolutely.
the world does.
Yeah.
There's different degrees, right? But most of the world does.
Right. We are more, to be perfectly honest, I think we're more of a collective society than what we think we are.
Of course. Of
We
course.
just don't recognize it all the time. We don't recognize it. So one of the questions that I had proposed to you earlier, or when we previously talked, is um, for therapists who want to use this model, who don't work with queer couples, but
Mhm.
more heteronormative couples or any other couples outside of queer couples. Is this a model that is something that they can easily bring into the therapeutic, process with other couples?
For sure. One of the like case examples is a heterosexual like relationship. Granted, they were interracial, so there were other aspects around race and identity that did come in. Definitely gender was part of that too. But I think that when we highlight people's autonomy in the choices of their life, no matter who they are, that's a wonderful thing, and this model does that. And I don't
Okay.
think we do that enough, right? Yeah, we know about some of the attachment needs that people have, right? Great.
Right.
And what about their aspects of their autonomy and power and how they show up in the relationship or how they ask for the things or how they again create their chosen relationships in the way that they want to because they are choosing values that align to the kind of life that they want alongside other people opting into that. I mean, many of the times, I'll say this briefly, is that many of the times when, when any kind of intimate relationship constellation comes to us, it's always about communication hey, we're not communicating, right? We have those issues. Okay, that's true, right? And what you find is that people haven't had conversations about the kind of values they want to align to, whether
Mhm.
those values are connected to social expectations, which again, coming from the model, right? Social expectations that have been put on them that they don't agree to, and or if they are unable or don't want to share power, right? Or feel like they don't have the power to make those changes in their lives. A couple that I saw recently is this is the conversation that we talked about, like power and power sharing, and it showed up where one of the one is a heterosexual couple, and one of them was like, I feel like I don't have the power to make these decisions anymore, and I don't know what to do about that, so this is why I've stopped. And I'm like, hmm, let's talk. Let's talk. Right? Where does that come from? Where about the power? Do you have the right to make those decisions or not? Like, how do you feel about hearing your partner share a little more about like their lack of power and where that comes from and how they have identified that? And it was a wonderful place that we got to because it was deeper. Obviously, yes, they have a need for attachment and emotional safety, but some of that was compromised by their ability to share power and sometimes to name the fact that they didn't have power to do these things.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me because when I work with couples and they say they have communication issues, I just flat out got to the point of asking, okay, is communication issues code for sexual issues?
That's true too. That's true too.
Most of the time I get the deer in the headlights look, or I get the, the putting your head down, like because communication is one thing, but communicating about sexual need and sexual preference is something completely different. So let's
Come
make
on.
sure we're on the same page here.
Come on.
So it's, as clinicians, we've learned to pick up the code words when people send that email in saying, I want couples therapy. We have communication issues.
Hmm. I think that this is also where I think a lot of like queerness shows up in the model, specifically one of the chapters around sex therapy. I liked writing that. It felt like a little more technical because some of sex therapy things can be technical, but what I tried to do is like talk about sex therapy in its like essence and then how it needed to be like, colored and like queered, like all of that, like just a little more spicy around that. But yes, with queer folks, I think many queer folks know that like sexual experiences are about pleasure, right? And that they know maybe how to ask about that. And sometimes, like, the kink community, they also have that language around, okay, let me figure out how to ask or how to consent into that. And they prioritize that. Part of that is like, being queer, you were in a different place, so you understand that the confines of how you connect to other people are very different, but they also can be very intentional.
Yep.
And it would, I think a lot of folks that heterosexual social expectations that come together, right? They're like, well, we're going to come together, have sex for procreation. Honey, that's not what sex necessarily is about. That may be a byproduct, but we can go on a whole thing about Song of Solomon if you want to go about that, where that route comes from.
Look,
That would be something. That's something I'm going to do, I think, as a workshop around what Song of Solomon means actually around intimacy. I've done
that
it. I want to share it
probably
largely.
one of the most spiciest books in the Bible you've ever wanted to read. I mean, and if you haven't read it, just read it. Just read it. Just read it one time all the way through. Don't say nothing. Don't write about it. Don't journal about it. Just read it and see how you feel.
That's right. That's right.
That's
Because
it.
nothing of it is about procreation.
Not
It's
a single
all
piece.
about pleasure.
Yep. Yep. Not a single piece. And it's one of the least quoted Bible passages.
On purpose.
Exactly. And when y'all sandwich that right in the middle, too, right in the middle. And then you put it in the Old Testament. That should be some New Testament stuff. Old Testament. I'm just saying. I'll get off the soapbox. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just saying. So, this amazing work of art that you have written, who is it for? Is it just for clinicians or is it for everybody? Who's it
This
for?
is oh, I love this question because this, like I said, is the third event that I've done, and the majority of people that have showed up I mean, people have really engaged with it, but the majority of people that have come to the book events have been non-clinicians. There's still been a number of clinicians that have been present. And the non-clinicians are like, I didn't know something like this exists, number one, which says to me that like this was originally written for therapists, but a lot of other people are finding out that like this exists and they want to know more about it for themselves. They have
Yeah,
better options, right, about what kind of therapist that they're going to go to because this exists. And they're wanting to like, I think make sure that their therapists are also like well trained. So this has been some of the questions too, is that like, so how do I let my therapist know about it? And it's like, let your therapist know about it. That's what you do. Here's my email address. We'll figure, some trainings will be coming online soon. But, this is for therapists, but it has been for the public, and the public has really, I think, really liked it. And they have been engaging with it because they know that they're seen and heard in this model. It's not
yeah.
just about these like heteronormative things that you then subtract and divide and then carry the one and then you end up to this new place. It's like, nope, we start from a place of queer blackness and
Yeah.
then branch out. So it's for everybody, but clinicians need to get this book.
I'm very appreciative of it. Is not a technical, wordy way of writing about this model. It's very easy to read, easy to digest and think about. Now, it really does. It made me think about how I um, am showing up as a couples therapist and working with my queer couples, how I can show up differently. So it's given me a lot of content to change and a lot of way of changing. So I really do appreciate that. So we are at uh 4:45. And so I want to
Mhm.
open up and allow you, if you wanted to read more passages while whoever is in online with us, if you want to put your questions in the Q&A, I will read them out so that Dr. Pennant can then answer your questions.
I think yeah, some Q&A would be wonderful, but I do want to read one more passage if that's okay while folks might be typing. Or if I think we might be able to bring some folks online or allow them to talk to you if you want to let us know. Um, but this is from chapter 14, this last one, The Future We're Building, and Martine Community. A personal reflection. As I write this conclusion, I sit with the weight and wonder of what MRT might become. I think about the couples who shaped this model by bringing forward their courage and refusing to shrink, their creativity in building love from scratch, and their generosity in sharing their stories. I think too about my own journey, how being a Black, queer, first generation American therapist is not just part of me, but precious puzzle pieces of my life that have created a unique and beautiful collage. How every moment of marginalization became preparation for creating something new, how MRT is more than just my professional contribution, but my love letter to every Black queer person who was ever told that their love was not real, was not valid, and was not worthy of celebration. This model carries my hope and hopes of communities who have never had therapeutic models that centered the radiance that allowed them to shine. It carries the dream of therapists of color who have been contorting themselves to fit into white frameworks. It carries the prayers of ancestors who love boldly despite every attack against their lives. Part A final offering. MRT is not complete, not perfect, and not for everyone. However, for those who have been waiting for a model that sees them, that centers them, and that believes in their capacity not just to heal, but to transform, this is for you. Take what serves you, adapt what needs adapting, challenge what needs challenging, make it yours, make it better, make it work for the communities that you serve. Because ultimately, MRT is more than following a manual or maintaining fidelity to a model. It's about a fundamental belief that the people most harmed by systems are experts in transforming those systems, that love persisting despite oppression is the most powerful force for change, that therapy can be a liberation practice if practitioners become brave enough to make it so. The revolution doesn't need permission, it doesn't need validation from institutions that were never designed to support it. It doesn't need evidence based approval from systems invested in maintaining oppression. It just needs you. It needs your courage to practice differently. It needs your creativity to adapt and expand. It needs your commitment to liberation over comfort.
Nice. So, for those of you who are listening, I encourage you to get this book. It is definitely life changing for me, and I believe it'll be life changing for you all. So, one of the questions in the Q&A is that you mentioned workshops, and so will there be online resources to view those workshops? And
Absolutely. If you join our mailing list, you'll be the first to know about when the workshops are coming. Tentatively, we're looking a little bit after April to start to host some of these. I think, I think the goal is to have these trainings be available to folks, offer CEs to folks, and it be affordable to folks. So just know this is not going to be one of those like level 75, $6,000 lottery things because that doesn't make it available for folks. So if you join the mailing list, you'll be one of the first to know about when those things go live.
okay. And then the next part of that question is for non-therapists, do you have worksheets to do even if you do them alone?
That's a good question. If you're able to, if you purchase the book, it comes with some of the supplemental like sheets that are on there, like the power sharing, values alignment, and societal expectation worksheets. And there are other exercises that are in there also that you can complete. And they're wonderful to do. I think that's a wonderful like thing to be able to like, what are my values about money, about sex, about friendship, about free time, and to start to write those out for yourself. Those can be very powerful things to do so that you're more attuned to what you need so that when you either are connected to other people intimately or not, you understand what the kind of qualities that you're looking for. So yes, they're a part of the books.
The last comment this particular attendee says is my therapist is white and queer and very receptive, and I think she would appreciate having this as a resource.
I'm happy to hear that. And like I said, have them sign up or I will give my email and some contact information for folks in Q&A, but like have people reach out for sure.
Hadaya, I think I'm saying your name incorrectly, so I do apologize. Not a question, just a sincere thank you for the space you've held and the clarity you've offered, particularly in this month and climate. It's been grounding, illuminating, and deeply appreciated.
Thank you so much. I like do this because other people need it and I understand why. And I have never honestly when I started writing this book, it took about 2.5 years. I got hurt and then I had my own feelings about again being so vulnerable and putting something out there. I was like, this is never gonna compete with everything else. And I'm like, I don't need it to compete. I just need it to be. But I never would have thought that what I have written would appear and launch around the times that are happening right now in this country and world, and how appropriate it is. So I consider myself quite fortunate to be able to do this. And again, is MRT and this model and this work is about community. And I want to build community. I want to make sure that other people have this, and then we all connect about how we do this work. That's also how we change the field.
Yeah, if those of you who are listening, if you have not connected with um, Dr. Pennant in some way, shape, or form, please do. He is definitely a resource for a lot of different things. But if you want some honest to goodness truth about how you are showing up as a clinician, that's who you go to.
I'm gonna put some emails if in the chat. So my email is in the chat. I wonder if I can. I'll make sure that like folks, when you're watching this online, that you have some of the links that we also put in there. If you are interested in the book, there's two ways that you can buy it. Uh, so in the chat, the first, if you buy it from the Calibri Center, if you buy it from the Calibri Center, then there's like a 25% discount. And if you're able to buy it from Rutledge, then it's full price. But we're appreciative of folks buying it from the Calibri Center, very much so. Again, those who are watching, I'll make sure that you have the links for these. Um, below the stream.
You have a participant who indicated that the last paragraph you read made them cry, good tears. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad that that could touch you. I it was one of my favorite things I think to write about it, about how to close out the work. Because I really this is like about other people. This work comes from other people too and their experiences. And I think it's such a privilege to be able to write about this and to bring this forward to the world. And I just really hope that it really does change. People will really understand how important it is and it changes our field.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your research, your work, your everything. I appreciated this time. I appreciated, definitely being here to join you in this process. And I'm very thankful for you as a friend and as a brother from another mother. Um, I really appreciate that. I value your opinion and your time very much
Thank
so.
you so much, Dr. Solomon. Thank you for sitting with me and talking with me about this vulnerable piece of work. But I just thank you how seamless you've made the space and how just protected and just thank you. And thank you for those who attended and asked some questions and are interested in that. I put, like I said, information in there. Thank you for those who will be watching this. It's just such a joy, and I consider it to be quite a treat. So thank you so much. I'm humbled by this experience. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Take care. Bye, y'all.
Bye.